Joining me now to talk more about this is Kenneth Vecchio, Republican strategist and attorney, and we have Howard Franklin, Democratic strategist. Gentlemen, thank you both for being here and joining us to talk about this. And I think before we actually launch into this to talk about the infrastructure plan and what Nancy Pelosi said, maybe we should talk about the big news, is that they're actually speaking, right? I mean, the president and House Speaker are speaking. Do we expect this to go beyond the initial phone call, or is at this point, again, just window dressing? You know, she floated a plan, nothing ever comes of it, Ken. Well, look,
while all of President Trump's political foes, the Hollywood boneheads, the fake news media, and the so-called academic elite were pursuing and propagating this phony Russian collusion hoax, Donald Trump has been quietly carrying out everything he promised. Summits with North Korea that are successful, low unemployment numbers, packing the Supreme Court with conservative justices, putting a stake in the heart of Obamacare by ripping out the tax, and now infrastructure. He's got Nancy Pelosi calling him. Why is Nancy Pelosi calling him? Because she knows that he's a deal maker, and she knows that behind the scenes, when I say behind the scenes because the media is not really covering it, he is carrying out everything. So I don't think this is unusual that him and Pelosi are talking. I don't think that they're as much foes as the media would like to portray. I think they kind of like each other. I think they like working with each other a bit. And I think, though, that unfortunately the politics gets in the way and they put on certain personas in front of the cameras. But I think that this is a great step, and I think Donald Trump is carrying out another thing that he's promised, infrastructure. What's part of infrastructure? How about building the wall? So he's got $200 billion right now. Pelosi wants $1 trillion, even $2 trillion. He'll get there, but give him the wall.
All right, let's bring Howard into this equation. Howard, of course, when Nancy Pelosi, when the House Speaker mentioned this up to $2 trillion, I'll get it out, I promise, in money for infrastructure. No mention of the wall here. Is that something that you think would fly?
I think the president's already had his bite of the apple as it relates to a border wall, and we see how far it got him. I think the number that Speaker Pelosi has come up with, $2 trillion, is exactly the reported estimate of America's infrastructure backlog. So it makes a lot more sense than the $200 billion number that President Trump has been bandying about. I'm not exactly sure, what publications the other guest has been reading. I haven't seen a set of promises that this president has delivered on, except to disrupt Washington. I think if he wanted to stand on the promise to disrupt Washington, he could certainly tell his supporters that he's done that. But in terms of other substantive policy changes, those that don't require a nomination or executive power, he's proven himself pretty inept as it relates to legislative moves with Congress. And he had 2 years of a Republican Senate and a Republican House. Now that those glory days are over, I don't think he'll be calling the shots very much more on any of these big issues.
Franklin, it looks like you've been propagandized by the fake news media at all that I was discussing before, because he's clearly been carrying out his promises. Haven't you seen who's on the Supreme Court these days? Haven't you seen the unemployment numbers for every race, ethnicity, and religious group? It's all lower. Haven't you seen what he's done with North Korea? He's been carrying this out. Now, look. The Democrats, they took away money from the wall. They were at a much higher figure. Now, Donald Trump was at a higher figure with overall infrastructure. Now he's at lower. Maybe they'll meet somewhere in the middle here, and he'll get some wall money. I bet you it happens. Check back with us in a couple months, and we'll see.
Let me interject here for a second, because on the heels of the House Speaker's announcement here that she wants us up to $2 trillion. I got it out that time. Senate Majority Leader Mitch McConnell said this. He says, I'm all for taking it up once the president and Democrats. Everybody says, okay, and here's how we're going to pay for it. He said, as soon as that magically appears, I think we have a way forward. But he doesn't sound so confident here.
Well, look, getting the money comes from 2 houses from the legislative branch. They're the ones who control the purses, right? The entirety of Congress, the Senate and the House of Representatives. Donald Trump finds ways to get money. He found a way to get money for the wall. He'll find a way for the infrastructure. But I think what's interesting here is what is $200 billion? What is $2 trillion? I'm not an expert. I don't know how far that goes. I'm not a mechanical engineer. I'm not an architect. I don't know really what those numbers mean, and they sound kind of random to me. Pelosi's number of $2 trillion, I bet you anything she has no idea what she's talking about at the end of the day.
Howard, do you think, I'll let you respond to that. Then I want to know if you think there's enough common ground here to move forward.
I finally heard something I agree with. The other guest on the show is certainly not an expert. The American Society of Civil Engineers said that there's a $2.2 trillion deficit in infrastructure backlog that America faces. It's not a number that Speaker Pelosi made up on her own. And I believe it probably makes a lot more sense for us to be pursuing that number as opposed to $200 billion. I think another thing worth correcting here, both houses do not originate bills that impact the budget. The House will originate bills that impact the budget. And I appreciate that Leader McConnell is at least acknowledging that as much as you might print more money, it doesn't actually change.
That's not correct. I'm sorry.
The impact to the economy.
So
you can't just say you printed new money and $2 trillion will just appear.
I have to interrupt you on 2 points. It's completely incorrect. Either house can propose bills that cause finances to be spent, and the president can sign those bills. That's how it works. Also, with reference to the $2 trillion, I'm not impressed by one set of civil engineers and what they say, probably lobbyist groups that are seeking to get paid.
All right, I have to cut you off both right there. Ken, Howard, thank you so much for your time. And coming up,